Welcome back to another episode of A Couple Conversations, where we talk about topics related to partnering in business and life. Today, we're talking about supporting each other in our health endeavors. Um, Last week, we covered how we structure our weekly meetings and the categories that are within those weekly meetings. One of the categories was health. So we wanted to take a little bit deeper of a dive into what that looks like for us.
Mhm. And it can look like a lot of different things. So it's important for us to be sharing with our partner and with ourselves so that we can acknowledge shifts that are positive or, not so beneficial in ourselves and in our partners and support each other in those endeavors. And we can't do that without, our first thing,
Right.
talking to each other.
Yeah. Number one, you have to talk to each other. Unfortunately, it could be very vulnerable, right? But it's also when we're in a vulnerable, uncomfortable state, there's room to grow, especially when you're talking about a partnership. So being able to talk about something as deep and heavy as health and wellness, where you're currently at, hopefully you're not dealing with issues, but where you'd like to be, is a topic to be had. Don't take your health for granted, especially when you're young. Yeah, so it might seem obvious, but oftentimes it is missed.
hmm And sometimes that can be something that is like you're already experiencing stress about it. And so talking to your significant other about it can feel additionally stressful. Or, sometimes if you're talking about accountability and things like that, it can cause a little bit of dissonance in the interaction. And so it's important to acknowledge that and then like sit together with it or like even individually, especially because really the change comes from within. Sit with the discomfort and move through it because you're with this person because hopefully you're with this person because they've got your best interest at heart and you have your best interest at heart. So you wouldn't put yourself in a situation where you're not, held to the highest regard.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's in conversation too.
right. And it could be a sticky situation if you find yourself involved dealing with health and wellness and your partner is not there with you,
Yeah.
dealing with health and wellness in the way or the capacity that you might be. Might work for some, doesn't work for me. I don't
Yeah.
think it works for Gingy. If you're sitting over here trying to be all healthy and I'm over here eating Big Macs, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So number two, I had mentioned this earlier. It's a vulnerable conversation. Number
Mhm.
two is being vulnerable. It's definitely a skill set that is one that needs to be practiced and honed through trial and error.
Yeah. And this can look like anything, right? So being vulnerable is like sharing those goals, sharing like, if Tafik's over here eating Big Macs and I'm like, you know, I'm really wanting to get rid of my sugar cravings, but we're over here at McDonald's every week, which, we don't do anyway, but just as a hypothetical, it's going to be difficult for me, one, to feel like I could share that with him because it's not something that he's showing me he values himself. And two, it's vulnerable and difficult because I don't see that shift or that support there to hold me accountable. And if that's something I'm already working through and the temptation is constantly staring me in the face, it'll be even harder to overcome that goal. So, sharing goals, successes, failures, desires, things that you can share together, things
Mm-hmm.
that you're working with, that you're doing on your own as well. That's all a part of being vulnerable. And
Yeah,
then it goes back to that accountability thing too.
yeah. And when it comes to accountability, you kind of give your partner the ability to hold you accountable, right? So if I have set a goal for myself and then throughout throughout my day, Gingy sees me not holding true to that goal, then it benefits her and our relationship if she would to ask me questions about it, if she would help to hold me accountable based off of what it is that I said I was going to do. Now, those conversations can be difficult. They can be triggering, especially when you yourself make the goal and then a third party is like, yo, did you XYZ? Did you take
Mm-hmm.
your CMOS? Did you, you know what I mean? And you're like, bro, like, can you back up? So it is important to be objective in when you establish the goal, being open and vulnerable in having conversations to keep you and your partner accountable.
Mm-hmm. It's important to remember that this accountability is coming from your partner as a loving reminder and not an attack or an attempt to catch you failing. Is more so a hey, this is something we said we were going to do. Have you done it? Like accountability buddy type things. And even if it's like you're something that you said you want, you've enabled your partner to be in that space and call you out on whether you're doing it or not. And I know for us, we're not always in the same space seeing each other do those things. So moving through that and being like, yeah, I absolutely did take my CMOS today. It's cool.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to number three, of supporting each other in our health journeys, and that's creating an action plan. It's sort of like when you when you do sales, generally it takes a couple touches, and the first touch is oftentimes something cold. It's a cold call, cold email, right? But the next conversation after that, when a relationship is established, you have what's called like a discovery meeting, a discovery conversation. And in that discovery conversation is where you figure out your goals, your mission, what you're doing now, and what needs to be changed. Having that discovery conversation with your partner, you can establish that for yourself, as well as establish information regarding what their personal goals are, what their mission is, and where they're at currently. So, yeah, and from there, you create the action plan.
And with the action plan comes the acknowledgement that there will be changes that need to be made along the way. Of course, you know what works best for you if you're I'm going to go all in cold turkey, let's do it, or if you're a gradual implementer. Sometimes I find that when there are a lot of big changes happening, it's important to, slowly introduce. Like you may have 15 goals that all apply to health, and you say, okay, the first three things or the first one thing that I'm going to do is how I'm going to start implementing this. Okay, I want to get rid of sugar. Cool. I'm going to stop buying things that have sugar in them. But if I have something with sugar in the house, cool. I'm not buying anything else with it. And if it's, you know, Harbo gummy bears, that's those don't come in the house. I'll find a way to make something else.
The tangents go crazy.
It wasn't. It's what's there. Remove sugar from your diet for a week. So start with a week or start with I'm not bringing it in the house.
Okay, so
That's what I'm saying. It was
to
on
sum it
track.
up more succinctly, when you create your action plan, you have an associated goal. And we can very easily, as Gingy was saying, create an absolute, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to cut out sugar, right? And that can be very difficult, especially if it's just a normalcy. It's sugar's a drug, right? So going
It's in so
cold
many
turkey.
things.
Some people can do that. I find most can't. So what helps when you're creating your goals is instead of saying I'm going to cut out sugar, it's I'm going to cut out sugar for a week, for a month. What that does is that it helps us to make the goal more tangible and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The idea is that the goals, the small wins, will have a snowball effect. And then as you do it for a week, and then maybe you go back and you have some sugar, and then maybe a month, 2 months later, you're like, no, I got to do this, and then you do it again. Over time, habitually making small changes, making the intention to make better decisions, will snowball, And you will be able to make more absolute goals. Like, no, I have no more gluten in my diet. We're removing it completely from the house and being okay with that.
And with those changes too, like the say you do it for a week and then you do have some sugar, like you said, you're able to feel like more intentionally and drastically how your body responds to having or not having that thing. And then you can say, oh, yeah, a life without sugar or a life without gluten is actually in alignment with the goal that I'm creating or a healthier outlook for me.
Yeah. That's kind of how our current health situation evolved. We've been making small choices, kicking this, kicking that. We kicked cheese out, and then all of a sudden we had cheese. And we
We
noticed
tried it.
we noticed we would like we removed cheese, and then we were like, all right, let's just bring a little bit of cheese. And then once that reintroduction of cheese happened,
Oh,
then it's just
cheese.
like all of a sudden we were just getting cheese, and we had different types of cheeses, and it was good for
It was
when it
good.
lasted, but then ultimately we're like, okay, we can't do this. And I say that to say this: when you make the change, the moment you go back and you have that piece of cheese and you allow yourself the space to do it, it's okay. But just know it lowers the threshold by which you need to get to in order to say that that decision is okay again. Right. But it's what you do after you have that piece of cheese. Do you dive headfirst back into, full blown, I'm going to have it all the time? Or are you still going to moderate yourself?
Yeah, the occasional pizza night.
Occasional pizza night.
And that's that.
And that's pretty much it. That's all our cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
Occasional pizza night. And it's gluten free. So, yeah. So, I guess we can close this out, huh?
There's a plethora of ways for us to support each other that we know we haven't touched on, but these are some of the main things. Talk to each other, make sure you're being vulnerable in the conversation, and then create an action plan individually and together. You're including your partner in that process. So, really take advantage of the sharing that you guys have and the relationship that you have to, really, yeah, put the pedal to the metal and make what needs to happen happen.
Yep. Strive to be better together. All right. This has been another episode of A Couple Conversations. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have more things coming. So, can't wait to see you next week.
See you next week.
Peace.